welcome to the deep dive. Today we are analyzing a, a, a massive geopolitical blunder playing out right next door.
It really is.
This isn't just about trade. It's about strategic resources, national sovereignty, and, how threats of annexation and heavy economic pressure from the United States have backfired.
And backfired spectacularly.
Oh, absolutely.
What our sources show is that Canada is executing this really rapid, systematic pivot. Instead of submitting to American demands.
Specifically from the Trump administration's rhetoric.
Right. Instead of that, they're actively locking down their immense critical mineral wealth. And this isn't some negotiation tactic, it's a structural shift.
A real change.
They're redirecting these vital resources toward European and Asian partners who, frankly, offer stability and respect.
We are talking about long-term structural damage to U.S. defense and tech supply chains. So we'll be diving into exactly which minerals are involved, the specific policy counterpunches Ottawa has thrown.
And why this is all happening right now.
And why Canada is essentially using its geology as a geopolitical weapon.
Okay, let's unpack this. How a close ally became a strategic rival almost overnight.
Well, the central mission today is understanding the scale of this resource position.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk about materials that fuel the entire 21st century economy, from missile defense to AI chips, you really have to start in Canada.
And the sheer scope is staggering. We often hear about oil or timber when we talk about Canada, but the crucial point is, well, it's the materials that define technological superiority. Jack Lifton, who's the co-chair of the Critical Mineral Institute, he didn't mince words. He described Canada as the storehouse of every one of the critical minerals that American industry needs.
Every single one of them. That quote is, "It's the foundation of America's vulnerability."
It is.
The U.S. Geological Survey lists 50 minerals as critical to national security. 50. The U.S. is 100% import reliant for 12 of those.
On 100%. And over 50% reliant for 29 others. And Canada, crucially, holds significant stable reserves of virtually every single mineral the U.S. cannot produce on its own.
So the reliance is absolute. Let's make this tangible. We should highlight maybe 5 critical minerals that are just foundational to the U.S. defense industrial base.
Okay.
Where Canada is either a primary or, in some cases, the sole alternative supplier. We're talking gallium, niobium, rare earth elements, cobalt, and tungsten.
Let's start with gallium. It's a perfect example of the strategic weakness.
Right.
When China restricted exports of gallium back in 2023, you remember that, in response to U.S. tariffs.
The whole world suddenly
The
scrambled.
world scrambled. Because gallium is essential for high-frequency radar systems, for satellites, for advanced missile defense.
Yeah.
The U.S. needed an immediate, stable alternative.
And the only one in North America was
In Canada.
Canada's Neo-Performance Materials, the only gallium producer on the continent. So Canada became the sole alternative supplier practically overnight.
Which gave Ottawa immense immediate leverage. And then you have something like niobium. Now, this is a mineral that just transforms steel.
How so?
You add just a fraction of it, and you increase steel strength by up to 30%, while also reducing its weight. This is completely non-negotiable for things like jet and rocket engines.
Superconductive magnets.
And critically, hypersonic weapons. Things that need materials that can handle speeds over Mach 5.
And Canada provides the muscle for that. Brazil is the leader, but Canada is the world's second largest producer.
About 10% of global supply, yeah. Through Quebec's Niavasi mine. The U.S. defense establishment knows, they absolutely know, they need reliable access to that 10%.
And we can't forget rare earth elements, or REs.
Right, the workhorses of modern tech.
They're essential for permanent magnets, so they're in every EV motor, every smart bomb, every laser targeting system.
And the scale is just impressive. An F-35 fighter jet, just one of them, contains 920 pounds of rare earth element.
And the problem isn't finding them in the ground. Canada has some of the world's largest reserves. It's the processing.
It's always the processing. China controls over 90% of the refining capacity.
But Canada is aggressively working to change that. With new facilities like the processing plant in Saskatchewan, they're trying to break that Chinese dominance.
And finally, you have cobalt and tungsten. Cobalt is for batteries, high-energy density batteries. Most of it comes from the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Which is not a stable place.
Not at all. Full of conflict and instability. Canadian cobalt, on the other hand, gives you an ethically stable, premium-priced option. and tungsten
Armor-piercing projectiles.
and high-heat rocket nozzles. It's
Right.
one of the rarest critical minerals the U.S. military needs, and again, Canada holds the key to a non-Chinese supply.
It's just an overwhelming picture of reliance, which leads to the big question. If the U.S. military needs this supply so badly, why is the political rhetoric so toxic?
This is where we get into the catastrophic backfire.
Right.
The contrast between the political sound bites and the operational reality is, as one source put it, a dark comedy.
Or dark comedy, yeah.
On one hand, you have the Trump administration discussing tariffs, even outright annexation. They signed an executive order in April 2025 investigating all U.S. critical mineral imports.
And on the other hand, you have the U.S. defense industrial base. They're making deals for supply with war-torn Ukraine and negotiating with the conflict-ridden DRC.
It creates this completely absurd strategy. You're threatening your most stable democratic neighbor that already has an integrated supply chain.
While you're courting places where the political risk is just off the charts, it's a total failure of strategic foresight.
And we know cooperation is essential because, behind the scenes, the U.S. Department of Defense is doing the exact opposite of what the White House has been threatening.
They've invested more than $70 million in Canadian critical mineral projects.
And they're doing it under the Defense Production Act. We should pause on that. The DPA, that's a Korean War-era law. It gives the president broad authority to prioritize national defense.
So when the DoD uses it, it means they consider a resource absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. They poured $15 million into a Canadian tungsten project specifically because they know that supply is non-negotiable for them.
So the military is quietly buying stakes, knowing that this 30-year defense cooperation means Canada is their safest bet. But that partnership is now actively being threatened by the politics.
And this is the critical self-inflicted damage. One expert we looked at highlighted the absurdity of it. When a U.S. official threatens Canada, it naturally raises national security questions in Ottawa.
Of course.
So the U.S. military wants to invest because they need the supply, but the very political environment created by the threat means Canada might be forced by its own national security interests to block those American investments.
They're literally making it legally easier for Canada to choose China over the U.S. when it comes to selling off resource stakes.
It's a massive systemic crack in North American security.
Which leads us to Canada's highly effective counterpunch. And this isn't just about temporary leverage.
No, this is a long-term plan for structural change. It's about protecting national sovereignty by taking complete control of their supply chain.
And prioritizing partners who won't threaten them.
Exactly. The first major action item is accelerating development. Mining projects are notoriously slow. I mean, the average mine in Canada takes 27 years from discovery to full production.
27 years. Wow.
They can't wait that long if their resources are being used as a political pawn. So they're fast-tracking permitting, environmental reviews, anything to cut that timeline.
And the geopolitical pressure was the catalyst, wasn't it? Right after the annexation talk started circulating from the U.S., interest just surged in the Ring of Fire region in northern Ontario. That's a huge untapped reserve of nickel, chromite, and copper.
And the local politicians immediately framed it as a necessary defense of domestic resources, a direct response to the American threats.
The second action item is tightening control.
This was a big one. In August 2025, Ottawa enacted a sweeping policy shift, dramatically tightening foreign investment rules, specifically for critical minerals.
And then they followed through, ordering 3 Chinese companies to divest their stakes in Canadian mineral firms.
That move sent a very, very clear message to the world. Canada determines access based on its national interest, and access is no longer automatically granted to anyone.
Not even your closest military allies if they behave erratically.
Precisely. And third, they're moving up the value chain. Canada is stopping the practice of just digging up raw ore and shipping it overseas.
More dig and ship.
Exactly. They are investing heavily in processing capacity, creating value-added domestic jobs. The Saskatchewan rare earth facility, the nickel and cobalt refining in Quebec. These are strategic moves.
It reduces China's control over refining, and it ensures that the higher profits and technical expertise stay in Canada.
And this capacity building is the key, because it enables all the new global partnerships. Canada is actively directing supply toward partners who treat them as equals.
Like you.
Europe is absolutely desperate to reduce its reliance on Chinese supply chains. They see Canada as the perfect partner.
And it's the same story in Asia, right?
The same strategic shift is happening across Asia. Japan, South Korea, Southeast Asian nations. They are all actively courting Canadian suppliers.
They need stable supply for their huge electronics and EV manufacturing sectors.
And they're willing to pay a premium for it to avoid all the geopolitical chaos that comes with dealing with the US or China. We are seeing major long-term deals being signed, 5-year lithium supply contracts, for example.
That completely bypass the American market.
Completely.
And this brings us to the core strategic implication for the U.S. The structural damage is happening now.
It is.
That Japanese manufacturer or that European battery maker, they're not going to cancel a massive 5-year contract just because the next U.S. administration promises to be nicer.
No chance. That supply is committed for decades, regardless of any future American political stabilization.
So what does this all mean? The U.S. has, well, it's squandered an unparalleled strategic opportunity. A recent CSIS report warned that the U.S. risks squandering the only real chance it has to find a stable alternative to China.
By alienating its strongest potential partner.
It's self-sabotage.
Yeah.
It's leading to real structural change. The Canadian Natural Resources Minister, Jonathan Wilkinson, he specifically noted that Canada is prepared to respond to U.S. tariffs by creating maximum pressure.
He explicitly mentioned critical minerals, said that Canada could restrict those exports, which would effectively force the U.S. to buy those same minerals from China.
The very outcome the administration claims it wants to avoid.
The sensible strategy was always this unified Fortress AMCAN, a North American critical minerals alliance to counter China. But the political chaos is actively unraveling that right when it's needed most.
It seems like every time a U.S. official threatens or minimizes Canada's role.
Canadian policymakers make another decision to reduce American market access.
So the U.S. military understands that cooperation is necessary. But the political environment has just made that fundamental cooperation impossible.
The storehouse is full. The stable, democratic neighbor holds the key.
But the Americans are not invited inside anymore.
So here's the thought to leave you with. If critical mineral projects take decades to develop, what is a compounding cost of alienating your most resource-rich, stable, democratic neighbor for decades to come? If your future leverage has been built on threats, not mutual respect, how much of that critical supply has already been committed elsewhere? That's the real structural cost of this miscalculation, and it's something for you to mull over.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.